So effort does not always equal effectiveness. I mean, most homeowners are, assuming that if my property still isn't working the way I want it, things are still not functioning correctly, well, I probably just haven't done enough. I need to do more. And that is not always the case. Before you really start doing anything else, we have to identify what the true pain points are before you can really make any design decisions and start moving forward with any type of renovation. And that is where typically people fail. Most people assume if I spend a bunch of money on my renovation project, everything's going to function and work perfectly. However, the reality is that most projects are not failing for lack of investment, but they're failing because people are making decisions apart from real clarity. So today we are going to be sharing with you why so many homes don't work even after thousands of dollars have been spent on design and renovation and even new build infrastructure.
And let's identify the real problem so that you don't make another decision that costs you more time, money, or peace.
Yes. So effort does not always equal effectiveness. I mean, most homeowners are, assuming that if my property still isn't working the way I want it, things are still not functioning correctly, well, I probably just haven't done enough. I need to do more. And that is not always the case. Before you really start doing anything else, we have to identify what the true pain points are before you can really make any design decisions and start moving forward with any type of renovation. And that is where typically people fail.
Okay, so why do surface level upgrades fail to solve, functional issues or design issues?
Well, surface level can be very superficial. Maybe I just don't I fell in love with something on Pinterest or on Instagram, and I want my room to look that way. So if I'm only looking at the surface finish of how it's going to look, apart from how the space is actually meant to perform or function, that's not the basis of the root problem. So as an example, let's say the furniture is prohibiting the room from functioning at the full capacity. And I'm not addressing the layout. I'm only addressing the look, the color, the finish design. I'm missing the point. I can change the color all day and put in, new textiles or whatever. But if I don't address the form and the function of the space, I'm not really solving any problems. And therefore, I'm still not going to be happy because the space doesn't quote unquote work after I've already invested the money.
So forgetting that there's function in the beauty. So not just the beauty aspect, but the functionality of the way the space feels and works.
Right.
You have to pay just as much attention to.
Exactly. And that's where a lot of people fail.
That's why we said before, design isn't just about beauty. It's about functionality. It's about activity.
Right. How you live in this space, how the space actually works for you and with your lifestyle.
Okay. So with that, what would be some common examples of maybe doing the right thing, but it's still not working right because we forgot to think about maybe a functional step?
Well, I can tell you we had a real example of a client who had recently done, it had been 2 years.
Yeah.
They did a major renovation of their entire property, but the renovation focused solely on upgrading the aesthetic and they didn't address any form or function. We saw this repeated in their bathroom and in the kitchen.
Yep. I remember that one.
So let's just focus on the kitchen as an example. If the kitchen was designed for, a smaller family, let's say, or a family with no children or any of the above, let's just say the kitchen was designed for a different time. And I come in and I don't like the look of the kitchen. So I'm just like, well, I need new cabinets and new countertops and new backsplash. And, I want it to look more current, more modern. Great. People will do that for you. Contractors can execute that type of renovation and it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. But if the root of the problem is that, well, it doesn't really lend to the lifestyle that my family lives. Like we come in through the garage entry point, which feeds right into the kitchen and there's nowhere to put our stuff. Or it feels like we're congregating at the island and we don't have an actual landing place to come in. Or I don't like the fridge right here because it's too close to the oven. Let's just, as an example. So now we're really getting deeper to the root, and it's not just about the finished aesthetic. It's about, how am I living in this space? And is it enhancing the way I live, or is it creating discomfort?
So really kind of looking at what's a surface level problem versus the root cause issue of why your space doesn't feel right or function right.
Yeah. Before you start doing anything in terms of aesthetic, you need to first evaluate, okay, well, what do I do in here? How am I using this space now? And how do I want to use this space? And start asking very intentional questions that lead you and point you in the direction of true resolution. And then after that's been identified, now we can start talking about paint colors and tile finishes and counter selections and appliances and all of the things that we see first, but they actually are not really what is ultimately going to influence how we feel and live on a deep level in the space, which is exactly how people fall victim to the idea that, the design aesthetic is my issue. When in reality, that's sort of masquerading and distracting people from the deeper issues that really affect their day in and day out. Another example in this specific case study, if you will, that we're talking about was the bathroom.
Yeah.
They had made some very superficial upgrades, like upgraded the flooring, removed, I think it was like an old tub, and put in a oversized shower. And so they had kind of focused purely on what would be, I guess, like a luxury master suite of upgrades. But there was no function. There was a tremendous amount of wasted space because there wasn't enough clarity in, well, how am I actually going to move about this space? Because the bathroom alone is more than just showering and cleaning yourself. And you have to really evaluate that from the ground up.
So other examples are, kind of like, I guess, let's go back to the kitchen, it feels cramped. Is it that it feels cramped, or you've got the flow of how you move through the space off?
Yeah.
Or let's say your living room, it feels cold. Is it a function of furniture's not sized properly, and again, flow is off, and colors are too dark, or what are the different things that we can fix there that fix the actual root of that problem and not just surface level?
Yeah. I really like the kitchen example. I want to give a specific story for our listeners. Even in a new build phase, you should be evaluating function over design aesthetic. So as an example, I designed a kitchen for a large family that had a lot of children. And so it was a new construction home. And part of the intentionality of the kitchen design was traffic flow for the smaller children moving in and out of the kitchen to access things that are necessary, like drinks or snacks or something from the fridge, without prohibiting the parents from being able to, work, be cooking, cleaning, washing dishes, stuff like that. So even before we ever had cabinets installed, tile, countertops, anything that would be pretty or aesthetic, the whole design was around how they would be living in here. So that I put the fridge on a certain wall, and I put the ice maker in a certain location, and I put the traffic flow around that for very intentional living, so that they could actually enjoy having a large family in a kitchen and not be stepping all over each other or getting in the way. And so that's just one example of how it doesn't really matter if it's renovation or new construction. Before I ever start picking paint colors, I need to assess, okay, who is this designed for? What type of people are going to live in here or that already live in here? And then that feeds to the next decision.
So basically you took, with keeping some of the main design features, like in that kitchen, there's always the functional triangle, but yet take it a step further and the functionality of how the space can be lived in, utilized in multiple aspects at the same time, but not impede that workability and function.
Yeah. In that same example, if I would have put one access point into the kitchen and I put the fridge or the ice maker or let's just say the fridge in the back, and the children would have to cross the oven or the sink to access the fridge, and mom's trying to cook at the oven or wash at the sink. That just
becomes a problem.
Yeah. Now you have a major traffic jam pain point, and it's only going to be frustrating. So it doesn't matter how beautiful it is. When you're actually living in it, it's now a functioning pain point that is going to leave you dissatisfied, ultimately thinking, oh, I need to redo my kitchen. But that is exactly why diagnosis has to come before design.
Yeah.
And if you're designing first and trying to diagnose later, you're not going to be happy.
Okay. So with that, like, what are some questions that someone should ask when walking in and trying to design that space before they just go into picking out?
I mean, a couple great starting questions are, how am I currently using the space? And like really pause and think about that. It sounds basic, but it will challenge your mind to start intentionally thinking in a specific way. And then, how do I want to use the space? What are the current pain points that I have? Like, what do I not like about it? And it's totally okay if your answer is, I hate the color. Great. That's a pain point. And then, how do I want to feel in the space? Or what is my vision of serenity or beauty, and how, like get specific.
So how do professionals address or assess a space before they start proposing the solutions? Like, how do you walk in and look at it?
Well, this is exactly why I created the ReturnOnDesign methodology. It's like giving structure in order to exactly how I evaluate the space and how I repeat that process in every room with every client, so that I get, a controlled outcome of, hey, great. You're telling me, as an example, you're telling me you don't like your room, or you don't like your living room, or it just feels dated, or it feels dark. Okay, great. All of that is very much something that I can visually see with my eyes. You don't have to tell me that, but you're telling me that. So now I need to understand, well, why do you feel that way? So I might ask, tell me more about your life. Like, how big is your family? Who lives here? What do you guys do for fun? Like, I want to get to know you so that I can start to understand, where that frustration is coming from. And then I take them down a very intentional process. Before we ever start designing and fixing anything, I have to understand, what's the functionality? Who are my clients? How do they live now? How do they want to live? Where's the disconnect? And everything starts from there. Once I identify the true pain point or problem, now I can start designing. But I never design until I really identify what's happening first.
You got to see things clearly of what's going on and how they're trying to use it, so that you can actually put into practice the functionality of design.
Yes. Like I said before, making it pretty is the easy part. And not all people think pretty is the same, you know? So that's very subjective. But really, I'm there to solve a problem. And I can't solve the problem until I understand what the problem is. And most of the time, people have a difficult time even identifying the problem themselves. So that's really where the strategy comes in, is push all the way down to the problem until we can completely identify that. And you can continue to refine it too. I mean,
it's not necessarily one thing and done.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may find multiple problems and need to address them.
But once you start thinking in that way and your mind is positioned to address and evaluate a space that way, it snowballs, design snowballs in multiple facets. But if I identify, okay, when I'm in the kitchen, I want to be looking out the window, let's say. I want to be able to watch my kids run around the backyard. Okay, well, that's a desire. And if your current setup doesn't support that, that becomes your pain point. So now we have a goal established from a pain point And we can design around that to meet that need, to bring that functional satisfaction that you're really longing for. But don't worry, like you don't need to be a designer to actually accomplish this for yourself. There is a framework. I call it the ReturnOnDesign methodology. And one of the things I have worked hard to develop is an actual blueprint that equips people to go through this process independently, to be able to evaluate using this strategy that I use and, find the pay points, establish goals, and actually create structure and order to implement design. So if that sounds appealing to you, great news. We have a new ReturnOnDesign blueprint that is accessible to people, and you can purchase that on our website, and it will allow you to immediately download all of the content. And it's a tremendous amount of value and structure that, again, can equip you to go through this process room by room, piece by piece, phase by phase at your pace. And it's going to position you as an expert, as a, designer of your own. And I promise you, it's going to produce fruit.
And I would even take it a step farther. It's not just for, say, the homeowner, but also as an investor. I mean, we have to realize and evaluate the properties that we work on as investments, that we go through the same process. This is not just for our design clients, but this is also what we do with our own investment properties that we have.
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up, because we actually have an investor roadmap that we are currently working on. And that will not only show you how to assess and identify the problems, but it's also going to help you determine how to strategically allocate your funds. So that's a little teaser for what's coming.
Sorry, I got there a little ahead, but it still works.
But yeah, so if you like what you hear, make sure you're subscribed, you're following, comment. You can even comment Blueprint and we will send the purchase link directly to you. You can also go to our website, audaciousdesigns.design, and make sure you click on the tab that will point you down to how to get that blueprint so that you can start evaluating your space with more clarity before you ever spend any money. Hope that helps.
Appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you next time.